Hello, my name is Aidan Rupert, alongside me Rob Murray, and welcome to episode 9 of the WCHC Sports Podcast, where we discuss the latest news and updates from around the sports world. We are pumped about our new intro music, but we are even more pumped to talk about sports. Be sure to subscribe to our WCHC Sports 88.1 FM YouTube page, where Rob and I will be posting our takes on the sports world each and every week. So last week, Rob and I talked about trying to get Boston Celtics center Taco Fall on our podcast. But for right now, we have got the next best thing. From the Holy Cross men's track and field team and a good friend of ours, TJ Duggan, ladies and gentlemen. TJ, it's great to have you on as our first ever guest on the WCHC Sports Podcast. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Aidan. I'm honored to be here and honored to be the first guest on the podcast.
And the resume, certainly speaks for itself with an athlete like TJ Duggan. After breaking his high school record for the pole vault not one, not two, not even three, but 8 times, TJ has been a very solid contributor towards the men's track and field team. Though he has been named to the Patriot League Academic Honor Roll, do not be fooled, as TJ has not let his intellectual endeavors stop him from his athletic excellence, a highlight of which was winning the pole vault with a PR of 4.4 meters at the University of New Hampshire meet. So, Rob, I'm going to turn things over to you. What do you think we should grill TJ on first?
Well, Aidan, I'd first like to know where I can receive such a glowing endorsement. As a member
y'all really gassed me up. I didn't
of Holy
Cross.
that was going. Of Holy Cross Club baseball team and an active member of intramural sports. I hope you can do your research for next week and maybe, throw a little clout my way. But if there's one thing I can ask TJ, I'd like to know how this pandemic has altered your mindset, schedule, plans as a student athlete, and what you expect from Holy Cross athletics as a whole moving forward. I know a lot of teams have different schedules in place. They know they have a season while others don't. I just like to get your thoughts on some of those things.
Right. I mean, yeah, the pandemic has been impossibly difficult on the athletic department of Holy Cross. From the start, it was really tough for them because obviously you can't just have, everyone coming back. I mean, it's the same reason that the student body for the majority didn't come back. But yeah, on an athletics basis, I think it was just an evolving situation as we went into the summer. The athletic department was really just taking things day by day. I don't know which teams are actually on campus right now, but they only welcomed 1 or 2 of the fall and winter sports back. And obviously track and field was not one of them because I'm still sitting in my basement right now. But yeah, from my personal perspective, it's tough. I mean, track is unique because we have both an indoor and an outdoor season. So we have both a winter and spring season. The fall is usually spent doing conditioning, and our first competition doesn't come until December anyway. So even if we got shut down for the entire fall and we're able to do no practicing or competition, we wouldn't miss any real meets, which is good. But yeah, not being able to be on campus and get ready, get back for the team, start running, start vaulting again. Like I haven't touched a pole or done any jumping since March when we got sent home. So I haven't even I've talked to my coach a lot, but I haven't seen him at all. It's tough to, interrupt the normal flow of things in such a abrupt way because, I'm going into my junior year and I'm starting to look towards that school record board. I'm looking for, like you read before, Aidan, 4.4 meters is right around 14.5, 14 feet 5 inches. The indoor record of Holy Cross is only 15.3, and I'm looking to grab that before I graduate, but let's see.
Yeah, I certainly don't blame you, and you are absolutely right in saying you are within reach of that milestone. But just in terms of not having been able to really engage fully with your sport since back in March, what's sort of the day-to-day been looking like for you? Obviously, to our listeners, TJ and I are teammates on an intramural basketball team called the Kimballers. Or did we change the name, actually? We changed the name to Kawhi's Laugh for
That's right.
the 2019-2020 season. But You got any chance to at least put some shots up or do some running?
Oh,
Anything?
I'm always balling.
Yeah.
I stay ready, Aidan.
We did beat you guys, I remember, last season. So I hope the listeners just keep that in mind. My team.
That
It's
is
always
you
a
guys the
hotly
business.
contested match between the Kim Ballers, aka Kawhi's laugh, and Rob's team.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. They did just were pretty good. We caught in a slump there, so.
But yeah, as far as day-to-day routine goes, I mean, the coaches have been sending us workouts. Our lift coach, our strength and conditioning coach, actually left Holy Cross for the third consecutive year, which means that essentially I'm going into my junior year. This next year, when we go back, will be whoever gets hired. It'll be the third year that I've had a different strength coach. A whole different conversation about the makeup of those job positions and the people that they hire for them. But yeah, as far as day-to-day activities, I'm trying to stay fit from a track and field perspective. Do any kind of lifting that I can in my house. A lot of body weight stuff. Trying to run a little bit, but it's not as much as I should be.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
I'm staying ready for intramural ball whenever we get back.
Well, see, this is the thing. As much as clearly you are ready to get back to the track and field grind, I do know that you know where your priorities lie, and that is first and foremost with Kawhi's laugh, the intramural champion that never was. But in terms of just talking about the strength and conditioning turnover year to year, you are right. I mean, and I think it speaks to you and what you've been able to do, as you did have noticeable improvement following your freshman campaign. You were sub 4 feet on most of your vaults throughout that first year, but then obviously you started to climb up the standings in a lot of the meets, and I can't imagine you have anywhere to go but up, both literally and figuratively. So in terms
I think you meant 4 meters. 4 feet.
I was going to
seems
say
like
4 feet would be
a very
some
low bar
7th
for
grade,
TJ.
8th grade numbers.
Even for TJ, 4 feet's a very low bar. I'm sorry about that.
I was going to say, I mean, Zion can jump 4 feet, and that's impressive.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the correction there, Rob. But
6th, 7th graders listening right now going, well, I can jump 4 feet, man. Get me on the podcast.
And hey, they know what to email, wchcsports@g.holycross.edu. If you can pole vault 4 feet, you can make it on this show. So elephant in the room, listeners, we have 2 of the 3 individuals on this call very disappointed Celtics fans right now, as the Boston Celtics just lost their Eastern Conference Finals series 4-2 to the surging Miami Heat. And obviously Rob has been spared most of really just the horror and agony with which TJ and I are conducting ourselves right now, though we don't show it. So I want to get thoughts from both of you on just what exactly went wrong for the Celtics this series and what went right for Miami. And I'll start with you, Rob.
Yeah, TJ, I'm sorry, Aidan. I'm already getting both of you confused. Before the series, I pointed to the reason why I picked the Heat in 7, not 6, as it turned out. But I think a lot of playoff basketball and playoff hockey and whatever sport you want to talk about really boils down to who's hot at the right time and who's coming into the series with the most momentum. And while one concern I had about the Heat was that they weren't necessarily battle tested this postseason, they had a lead in every series they've played so far, and they've never been down or tied in any series. I think that speaks to just how well they've played night in and night out. And you saw the same thing here. Even on their bad nights and losses to the Celtics, they looked like a team that was just prolific in spreading the ball around to their different scorers, making shots from all around the floor. And with the Celtics, I can't help but think a little playoff fatigue set in after what was a grueling series with the Raptors and an equally tough series against this Miami Heat team. I think the way the Heat are built are extremely unique in that they have guys who can kill you from anywhere on the floor. They're very sound defensively. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo can make a case as 2 of the top 10 defensive players in the NBA, both athletically and fundamentally. And I think it's going to be a really great series between the Lakers and the Heat. I'm not sure I want to roll with the Heat again this time. The Lakers with LeBron and AD pose a whole new challenge, but with the aforementioned Butler and Adebayo, I think we'll see some great matchups, one-on-one. I think Bam versus AD would be a spectacular game to watch in the game itself. And Jimmy Butler and LeBron is a matchup that goes all the way back to when LeBron was on the Heat and Butler was on the Bulls, as they squared off in a few playoff series. So, my deepest condolences to Boston fans out there. You know how much I love you. But, I think, yeah, no, I don't. But I think the Celtics are well positioned over the next few years to really own this Eastern Conference. We were talking about it before the show. It's as open as it's ever been, in my opinion, with Giannis and the Bucks having their fair share of struggles. And the fact that the Miami Heat as a 5 seed can get to the playoffs and the NBA Finals just speaks to the level of parity I think this league and especially the Eastern Conference is moving towards.
Well, right. I certainly agree with with a lot of what Rob you were talking about. I could go on for a while about what I think the Celtics did wrong in this series, particularly just because no one's harder on the Celtics than I am as a diehard Boston Celtics fan. But I think primarily it comes down to, I think, something that you talked a little bit about, Rob, is that we won a tough 7-game series with the Toronto Raptors, and we came out, and I think we almost, in a sense, left it all on the floor in Game 7. Ironically, it was the same floor that we played all these games on. But I think we left it all on the floor in the Toronto series, in the sense that we even from Game 1 to Game 6, the entire series, I don't think we put up the same level of fight as we did playing Toronto. And I don't know, like Brad Stevens brought it up in Game 5, start of the fourth quarter, end of the third quarter, when the Celtics actually started taking control of that game. He called timeout and got the guys together and said, hey, this is the first time I've seen Celtics basketball thus far in the series. And I think that was honest and extremely correct, because Celtics brand of basketball is fight and claw and, the Marcus Smart model, where he's going to do all the intangibles, diving on the floor, scrapping for every loose ball. That's the brand of basketball we play, and that's why we've been so successful, is that when we're playing at our best, we can beat anyone in the league. But we sure did not look like that in this Miami Heat series. They dismantled us. They were on offense. They were on fire from the start of Game 1 to the end of Game 6. And, that just has to do with consistency of players like Duncan Robinson, and Bam Adebayo destroyed us. But, yeah, tough series. I think, though, we can be better next year. We got most of our players coming back.
Yeah, well said, TJ. And as upset as I am with the performance of the Boston Celtics, I feel as though I certainly owe the Miami Heat an apology of sorts. Just 1 or 2 weeks ago, Rob, you probably remember me talking about how I picked the Celtics to win this series based solely on the fact that I felt they were more well-equipped to adjust on the fly. We talk about how battle-tested they were from that 7-game series against Toronto, and seeing all of these wrinkles in the defense, such as the boxing one and the zone defense from the Raptors. And I thought that would work to the Celtics' advantage. And at times it did. But the problem really boils down to the Heat. They stuck to what they did best, and they didn't let adversity really throw them too far off course. You even saw, as the Celtics really began to gain some level of comfort in playing against Miami's zone defense, Miami really stuck with it. They did switch to man down the stretch of the closing Game 6 today, but really they stuck to their guns. And I think that that's observable just in their role players even. I mean, Jay Crowder, he was Klay Thompson 2.0 the first few games of the series, and then he had a stretch in which he hit, I believe, 6 of 35 three-pointers or something along those lines, and he just kept shooting them. And to the credit of his teammates, they kept looking to him and saying, Jay, we need you to shoot those. And he did. He eventually caught fire just for a brief stretch tonight, and actually he did step out his comfort zone a little bit and just getting to the basket on some really nice cuts where Bam found him time and time again. But yeah, really for Miami, it was the zone defense. It was rebounding and their tenacity on the glass. And it was more than arguably anything, the Goran Dragic, Bam Adebayo pick and roll, which just tore Boston apart possession after possession. So it's a lot of what Boston did wrong. And I don't think we can get around that fact, but it is just as much what Miami did right. And I think that obviously what we have to look forward to in the next series is, can Miami continue to do these things right against a clearly superior Los Angeles Lakers team, who, let's not forget, they won all 3 of their series 4-1. So currently they're standing at 12-3 in these NBA playoffs. And so before we move on to talking about the New England Patriots for a little bit, let me just get predictions from both of you, just so we have it on the record to use against you later on. TJ, I'll start with you. What are you thinking for Heat Lakers?
So, yeah, just before we leave the Boston-Miami series, you talked a lot about what Miami did right, and I totally agree with that. Just to go off what I was saying earlier about the Celtics basketball mentality, I think both of these teams came in as gritty, competitive teams. And I think one of the things that Miami did most right was that they beat us at our own game. They beat us at our own brand of Boston Celtics hard-nosed basketball, where both of these teams have embraced being the underdog at some point, in the last few years, especially in Miami. Every series they've played thus far, they've been the underdog, right? They were as far as the betting line goes, the Boston Celtics were the favorite in every game of this series, even when we were down 3-1. So I think the Miami Heat just embraced the underdog mentality and scrapping and clawing for every ball, and that's why they came out hot and they never cooled down. But as far as them moving on to just to contrast all that with what I'm about to say, I don't know that the Lakers have shown that nothing can slow them down in any substantial or consistent manner. I don't think these guys win more than one game against the Los Angeles Lakers. And in somewhat anticlimactic finals series, I'm going to take Lakers in 5.
Interesting. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with what TJ said. We talk about how much adversity Miami has faced, and while I think they've been able to respond to bumps in the road in some of these series they've played, namely their ability to close out when the Celtics were starting to gain some momentum back. You got to remember the Heat have not been tied or down in a series this entire post. And while I think that does speak to how well they've played and how hot they've been these past few weeks in the bubble, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond against a Lakers team who will likely go up 1-0 or even 2-0 in this NBA Finals. I don't want to speak too early or speak for you, Aidan or TJ, but I think the main thing is, how is Miami going to respond? I don't think we know what kind of team they're like when they have their backs against the wall in the postseason, just because we haven't seen it. And as far as the Lakers go, you said it perfectly, TJ. Really, nothing is slowing them down. The minor concern I have for them is their ability to, I guess, match Miami's guard play in terms of guarding Robinson and Hero and Dragic, because if you see any sort of continuity across their 3 postseason losses, the Lakers have had trouble at times guarding the likes of Jamal Murray, Westbrook and Harden, Dame Lillard. And I think their roster is a little thin if you look at their guard play. Their forwards are magnificent, but when you get on that smaller end of the court, they might have some struggles against what was a very cohesive and strong Miami backcourt. But I'm going to have to agree with you, TJ. I think my gut tells me Lakers in 5, maybe 6, considering how well Miami's been playing and shooting. If they can carry that momentum into the series, things might get a lot more interesting. But I'd like to see how the Heat deal with that adversity and pressure being down in a series before I start picking them to win the series.
Yeah. I think we're going to see this Miami team really get tested when LeBron and AD start running the floor.
It'll be interesting.
Absolutely.
It'll show their true character for sure.
Right.
And TJ, you said it, because running the floor is what LeBron, AD, and these Los Angeles Lakers do. And that's going to be one of the most important narratives of this final series, is that Miami, as explosive as they are offensively, they play a whole lot slower than Los Angeles Lakers. And so often in this Denver Nuggets series, we saw the Lakers getting easy transition looks, even some breakaway dunks off of made baskets for the Nuggets. And so really it's going to be a story of who can dictate the tempo. And I think ultimately that's what some of the close games will come down to. But that said, I also do like the Lakers in this series. I'm going to take them in 6 games, and here's why. I think that Miami just has so much shooting right now, and I think that's something that I didn't realize necessarily going into the Celtics series, but every player who steps on the floor for the Miami Heat, with the exception of Bam Adebayo, who's a respectable mid-range jump shooter, is a viable three-point threat. Obviously, we didn't see too much of Kelly Olynyk or Kendrick Nunn in the conference finals, but we all know that they can absolutely fill it up. And then you talk at the other positions, and you're just running a lineup of players who really, really know how to train an open look. And some of these guys like Hero and Robinson, it's sort of what the Celtics were missing, and that's a player whose shot you expect to fall every single time, no matter if they're hot or cold. And I think the Lakers lack that a little bit. They're a little bit streakier between Caldwell Pope, Kuzma, and then obviously it also becomes a matter of how long can they keep Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee on the floor, given that they are virtual non-threats from the perimeter, though they certainly will have a large role in stopping Bam Adebayo. So I'm going to take Lakers in 6. Rob, you said that the team that's hot right now, obviously that's what it's all about. And right now the Lakers and the Heat are hot, so I can see Miami getting a couple of games off the Lakers, but all three of us are in agreement here. It seems like the Los Angeles Lakers season is theirs to lose. So real quick, I just want to get both your thoughts on what unfolded with the NFL today, especially the Patriots. We did have a pretty good Patriots outing today, if I'm not mistaken. So, TJ, did you catch any of that game?
Bits and pieces of it. I understand we played pretty well, just on a grander scale. I'm liking what I'm seeing from the new look Patriots this season, especially last week against a tough opponent in the Seahawks. We ended up dropping that game short by 1 yard, but I think as a diehard Boston sports fan, I was as happy last week when we lost as any time the Boston sports team has lost in a game. Just saying, all right, we got a new guy under center. Tom Brady leaving. We got a serious, almost a culture change. You can feel it as someone as rigid and consistent as Tom Brady leaves, and someone like Cam Newton comes in. I think a lot of people, analysts and fans alike, had some pretty mixed expectations going into the season, but played hard. Cam Newton ran the 2-minute drill exceptionally well in the last portion of that game. I got it done within 1 yard. We ended up dropping it. Whatever. We still carried some serious momentum into this week. And we ended up dispatching a pretty legit Las Vegas Raiders team and by 15, 20 points?
Yeah, the final score was 36-20. And TJ, as much as it kills me to see the Patriots continue to do well, I would be thrilled if I was a Patriots fan myself, being able to kind of take offensive success in stride, even with the loss of Tom Brady, and create this new offensive identity that's more kind of centered around a punishing ground game. I think the Patriots picked up 250 yards on the ground today against the Raiders, which is phenomenal. I think they had way more success the first 2 games, given that they were playing pretty shady defenses in the Dolphins and the Seahawks. The Raiders were a bit stingier at the beginning, and you could tell with how Cam Newton struggled in the first and second quarters. He was missing a couple easy throws. He was getting banged up on the run. And I think if the Patriots want to match up against, a Chiefs or a Ravens team, they're going to have to trust Cam Newton throwing the ball. He's going to have to make those tough throws now and again. And like they did this week, they just got to establish that ground threat, because if guys like Cam Newton and Rex Burkhead, who had 3 touchdowns today, Sony Michel and James White, if they're running wild all game, it's going to open up more passing routes for Newton, and it's only going to make that offense more exactly. It's only going to make that offense more proficient. But 2-1 through the first 3 weeks of the Brady-less era, I'd be very happy if I was a Pats fan. I think a wild card spot is theirs to lose. I'm not sure if they'll be able to stack up with the Bills. They've looked really good.
We'll see. I'm actually excited for that.
Yeah,
for that matchup whenever it comes. There's 2 wild card spots in each in this year, right?
There's 3. The field expanded to 7 teams in each conference, so things look a lot better for the Patriots. They look a lot better for my Chicago Bears, who are 3-0. I never thought I'd say that. If you started the season, Nick Foles replaced Trubisky, which I was very happy to see. But, I'm happy that the NFL is back. They seem to be doing pretty well in terms of their COVID protocols. They've only had a few cases here and there each week. So
Right.
it's an encouraging sign to see a lot of these leagues really commit to, enforcing strict protocols and sticking with them and making sure they can not only put a good product on the field for their fans, but also keep one another safe.
Aidan, you have any significant comments on the NFL or the past game today before I go Rob about the Bears?
No, hey, I mean, I was just going to say, as a Rochesterian, Buffalo Bills 3-0, albeit after a controversial ending to today's game. But no, I think that what's going down in New England, I think Cam Newton maybe captured it best in that meme that's now circulating the internet where he's just chilling on the sidelines like this a little bit. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot to be excited for, not only for New England, Buffalo, but all of the NFL right now. I think that, Rob, you said that the league is really handling things well in terms of protocol, and frankly, I'm happy for all NFL fans, and most of all for the players and teams that they're able to get this season kicked off the right way.
Yeah,
just one quick thing. The only major concern I have for the season now is if guys can just stay healthy on the field and sort of avoid this injury plague that's taken over the league. Hopefully these first 3 weeks will kind of tamper off as we move on. But yeah, I'm ready for any and all questions about the Bears, TJ.
Do you ever call it an injury pandemic?
Oh man,
too soon. Anywho, yeah, Rob, our token Bears fan. How legit do you think the Bears are? In all reality, so far this season, you're 3-0. All opponents aside, how you won the games aside, it's 3-0. It's 3-0. How legit do you think you are going down the next 3 or 4 games of the season?
Yeah, I was talking about it with my dad, and I mentioned him. Dad, the teams we played are combined 1-8, and we've won by a combined 12 points against those 3 teams. So, there's still obvious concerns. This team has broken my heart once too many times, but I like how Matt Nagy, the coach, finally felt comfortable bringing in Nick Foles from Mitch Trubisky. Things clearly weren't working out in the first half against a team like Atlanta, who, if you give them too many offensive possessions, 9 times out of 10 they'll bury you. And Trubisky missed a wide open Anthony Miller for a touchdown in the first half, threw an awful pick to start the second half. And once Foles came in, it was night and day. He threw 3 touchdowns. He led a 16-point comeback spanning into the fourth quarter. So I think if the Bears can find even a little bit more offensive efficiency with Nick Foles in that lineup, I like their chances of sneaking into that last spot simply because they've started 3-0. And historically, you win your first 3 games, you have a very good chance of making the playoffs, especially now with this expanded field, as you alluded to earlier. But we got a few tough matchups coming up. We got the Colts next week at home, then we got the Buccaneers in primetime at home in week 5. So I'm assuming Foles is the starter. If he's not, I'm catching the next flight out to Chicago and slapping Nagy on his bald head. But
Tampa defense would be a good test.
It will. I'm not jumping into anything just yet. I'm not pushing the celebration button just yet, but I'm very happy with the way things start. If you told me the Bears would start 3-0 at the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have believed you.
Well, we're on the topic too. Oh my God, imagine the poor Falcons. Imagine being a Falcons fan.
Yeah, it was.
How just disappointed would you be in your team?
It was the first time a team has blown back-to-back 15-plus point leads in a season. Aidan and I talked about this last week.
Yeah.
Teams up, I think, 19 points in the second half with no turnovers. We're 443-0, and the Falcons can now happily claim that only loss in history. So, yeah, if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, maybe I would consider
Yeesh.
taking a break from football this year and
Yeah.
maybe the next few years because they just can't seem to catch a break.
And honestly, if I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, I'm taking a break from this podcast. Is clearly, Rob, you have no problem just putting them on full blast, right?
I
I
haven't
think if I'm an
forgiven
Atlanta
them.
Falcon, I'm taking a break.
Yeah,
Take a break from
I
football.
haven't forgiven the Falcons for what they did a few years ago at the Super Bowl. They will never live that down in my eyes.
I mean,
Never
Atlanta.
mind.
Yeah, you have Trey Young. That's about it. You have Trey Young and one or two
Yeah.
good players on the Falcons, right?
Hey, the Braves, they just clinched number 2 seed. MLB postseason's coming up.
Right. You are right. The field is set, right, Rob?
They are. The Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers are 2-1 seeds. The wild card series start this Tuesday and Wednesday. So expect a lot of baseball talk coming back to the podcast over the next few weeks.
And if we're jumping all across the sports world, might as well get your thoughts real quick, Rob. We would be remiss if we did not mention the NHL Stanley Cup Finals going on between Dallas and Tampa Bay right now, standing at 3-2. What are your thoughts on the unofficial team of the WCHC Sports Podcast, the Dallas Stars?
Well, they started 1-0, and that was as far as we got last week. So I was thrilled to see that. But Tampa Bay takes the next 3 games in pretty convincing fashion. And that sets up a phenomenal Game 5 a few nights ago. Dallas wins 3-2 in overtime to make the series 3-2. And the biggest thing that stuck out to me for this series is how both teams have shown sort of a championship mettle and ability to claw their way out of really tough games when their backs are against the wall. The Lightning, when they were up 2-1 in Game 4, they went down 2-0. They tied it up at 2-2. They went down 3-2. Then they took a 4-3 lead, surrendered that lead to the Stars to force overtime, and then they scored the game-winning goal to make it 5-4 and go up 3-1 in the series. And on the other hand, you have the Stars, backs against the wall. The cup is in the building for Game 5. They get down early to the Stars, or to the Lightning, claw their way back and win just a really gritty double overtime game in Game 5. And that sets up Game 6 for tomorrow, Monday night. And, as much as I want to give our boys a chance for Game 6 and hopefully Game 7, the Lightning, I think, are just far too powerful when you look at this matchup on paper. They've proven they can bounce back from adversity, and losing a double overtime game in the Stanley Cup is about as much adversity as a team can face. So as much as my loyalties lie within the Stars, I fear it may be the end of the road soon for them. Anton Hudobin has been pretty inconsistent across this series. He had pretty strong Game 5. He only gave up 2 goals, but he gave up 9 goals combined in Games 3 and 4. So I think it really just depends on which goaltender for the Stars shows up if they want to be the next team in a series of 3-1 comebacks that we've gotten to witness across these playoffs for the NBA and the NHL.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, kudos to the Stars for not going down in 5. I was watching, and this will relate to hockey, I promise. I was watching Inside the NBA after the Celtics the other night, and I like what I think it was Kenny was saying about how he doesn't even believe a series has essentially begun until one team has their back against the wall, or until one team is facing elimination, and that's when you really start to see who's got what it's made of. Are you gonna leave it all out there when your season's on the line, or are you gonna wilt and lose in whatever 4, 5, 6 games? But yeah, still got some fighting in those Dallas Stars.
Yeah, our fingers are definitely crossed for Dallas as we have once again adopted them as our unofficial team. So in lieu of assists, fumbles, and what to watch for this week, I will just ask both of you any concluding thoughts. This can be about anything. It can be sports. It can be 1 month into the remote semester, how things are going. We can just close things off. I'll start with you, Rob.
Yeah, I think I'll keep it to the world of sports. The real world is far too depressing right now. But, as we look at teams like the Stars and the Heat make their respective league championships. One thought that I've been having across this last week is, as good as these two teams have played in a normal setting with fans, and everything else that comes with that, do we still see these teams making such an incredible, improbable run to the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup? For the Stars, I didn't pay too much attention to regular season hockey to make a decision on that. I do think there would have been some games that would have gotten away from them had they played on the road against a team like Vegas or Colorado, who did look a lot better on paper, but still fell to the Stars ultimately in the bubble. And I think the same goes for the Heat. I didn't see a whole lot of them during the regular season. I know they were being coined as sort of a dark horse team as we approached the postseason before the coronavirus lockdown. But I'd like to get your guys' thoughts, I'm sure mainly on the Heat and, where you think they would be had none of, this happened.
Well, I'll start. Miami Heat, obviously, they are, in the purest sense of the phrase, a dark horse team. They are, I think, the first 5 seed or below to make the finals since Van Gundy's New York Knicks in 1999. And then there were the Hakeem Olajuwon-led Rockets back in the mid-90s. But, yeah, I didn't think it was for real. And obviously we have to acknowledge, I think they finished the season with the same record as the Indiana Pacers. So they weren't necessarily an underdog in that series. They just lost the tiebreaker to those guys. But, yeah, I mean, more than anything with Miami, and I'm saying this as a Celtics fan that just saw the Heat dismantle Boston, they're tough to hate. And I think that would be the case if they were an 8 seed or if they were a 1 seed. And, they have a couple of former Celtics on that team. That certainly doesn't help, as I was a big Kelly Olynyk, Jay Crowder fan. But beyond just those guys, yeah, right? But beyond just those connections, I mean, you're talking about your starting shooting guard, Duncan Robinson. He was a D3 basketball player, and he was a darn good one at that. But come on, I mean, the guy was not recruited in high school. He made it at a D3 school. He shot the ball really well at a D3 school. And then he was coming off the bench for Michigan, right? Obviously a top-notch basketball program. But then he didn't even have a shot in the NBA, right? He was a two-way player, and his second year in the league right now, and all of a sudden he just had the most three-pointers in a single season in Miami Heat history. Like, where are they finding these dudes? Kendrick Nunn? This dude wasn't even a high draft pick. So I think that it speaks a lot to the player development of the Miami Heat, and more importantly to the culture that Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, among others, have really instilled down there. And right. I can see now more than any time before what Jimmy Butler saw in the Miami Heat when he decided to take his talents to South Beach.
Yeah, like you were saying, huge credit to Eric Spoelstra for being able to take that player that no one saw anything else in and use him in the way that he's intended to be used. Every once in a while you'll see a player go to a team and everyone's, raises their eyebrows and it's like, hold on, what? Like they must know something we don't. And most times they do, because, those players, those real good players like Duncan Robinson are just waiting to be used right by the right team in the right community, the right culture, kind of thing. And that'll bring me right into our discussion of the bubble effect. I think it's certainly a huge effect. Do I think that the Clippers would have blown a 3-1 lead if half the games would have played Staples? No, I don't. I think they would have gained a huge amount of momentum from their home fans, playing on their home court, and a tough place to play for the Nuggets to try to come back from a 3-1 deficit when you have, like I said, when you have to play half your games at the Big Bad Staples Center. However, I think you wouldn't see that with the Miami Heat. I think, like Aidan was saying, their culture is just too strong. I think they embrace that underdog role so well. They would have gone into any stadium. They would have played half their games at TD Garden, which I'd like to think is a notoriously tough place to play. And I think they still would have executed their game plan the same way they did. I don't think it would have affected them in the same way.
Yeah, TJ, you make a really good point about, how the Heat have been able to find some of these guys who just work in their system and maybe wouldn't be the same players elsewhere. A big example of that kind of dynamic that sticks out to me is Malcolm Butler when he was on the Patriots. I mean, this guy, he went to, I think it was West Alabama. He was a cashier at Popeyes the season before he played for the Patriots. And he made arguably the greatest play in franchise history with that interception of Russell Wilson on the 1 yard line to seal the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I echo both of you guys. All credit to the Heat. And, while we can ask questions about, which team would have done better if there were fans, which teams would have done better if there weren't any fans, it's too late to make excuses. This is the way things are. You can make the flip side of the argument as, teams like the Heat and the Dallas Stars were the best equipped to handle such radical change and make, those important adjustments on the fly, like any good team needs to, and that they deserve to be there. So, hindsight is 2020. We're never going to get, the original 2020 playoffs back, unfortunately. But I think what we've gotten over these last 2 months have been the next best alternative. And it's a sports experience that diehard fans like us and really casual fans everywhere will surely never forget and tell their kids about for generations to come.
And I will close things off by saying this: Los Angeles Lakers against Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. First time in NBA history that we have a finals matchup between two teams, neither of which made the postseason the previous season. So I will put my feet up and enjoy this final series on my family's brand new upgraded TV. First upgrade in nearly a decade. We're talking 65 inches HD. Like I'm playing like Mario Kart on this, right? Just to see what it looks like. And oh my gosh, I am loving it. So that is going to wrap things up for episode 9 of the WCHC Sports Podcast. We thank TJ Duggan for his time this evening in talking Holy Cross athletics, Celtics, Patriots, and everything else. And we also thank intramural and club sports star Rob Murray for his continued devotion to the WCHC Sports Podcast. Thank you both so much, gentlemen. And we will catch you listeners same time next week for episode 10.